Welcome to Swartz Talkin Sports. I'm your host, Les Swartz. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. We have a special show tonight, a first. We actually have an athlete in the prime of his career currently doing his thing. Normally, we've had tremendous athletes coming on post-career in retirement, but we've got an actual live person coming in who's doing his thing right now. We're going to have Tony run the reel, and then we're going to bring on our special guest. So, everyone, check it out.
Literally $6 or $7, and the guy at the gym, owned a restaurant, and that's where my wife worked. He was feeding me. I was training and I was eating there. I was working in a warehouse part-time and teaching classes. I can't do this. If I can't beat him, I have to quit. If I can't beat him, I have to quit. I don't want to quit. I'm not done. This is my life. This is my only path. I've gone too far to go back. So, my name is Joe Solecki. I'm fighting on this upcoming season of Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, and my fight will be on July 9th in Vegas.
Well, let's bring him on. We are pleased to introduce UFC Lightweight Contender Joe Solecki. Hey, Joe.
Hey, what's up, Les? Thanks for having me. I enjoyed that intro. That was good. That was
You look good. You look good, brother.
Yeah,
I gotta tell you.
looked a lot better. I looked a lot better than that. Shows you that fighting professionally ages you like an avocado, I always say. And
I don't know. You seem to be doing it. You seem to be doing it pretty well, Joe. Let me just say.
I appreciate that.
Well, I know that you just finished up a training session, so we really appreciate you jumping on and doing this kind of at the last minute. So thanks so much. We're going to have some questions from a lot of people, that are viewers right now. And I just kind of want to get into a little bit. And I know that told a little bit of your story, but I know you're a New Jersey guy. How did you even get into MMA? Were you a wrestler? Did you enjoy like WWE? Were you a boxer? Like what were the reasons you kind of got into MMA and fell in love with it?
I was too young for really any of that. I wasn't even in school yet when I got into to martial arts. It was all kind of I'm a man of faith, so I'll say God's hand. I used to say before that accident or coincidence. But I watched the Power Rangers as a little kid, 3, 4 years old.
Okay.
My brother was playing baseball. He's a good bit older than me. He's about 5.5 years older. I wanted to do karate because of the Power Rangers. My parents wanted us in some kind of activity,
Yeah.
but I was 4 at the time, so too young for most things. They sent him to karate. It was 1997. He was playing baseball, wasn't getting playing time. They said, we both wanted to do it. We both like the same stuff, so they said, maybe we'll try something individual. Martial arts is good for, discipline and all that. It's funny because we weren't really allowed to play football or hockey because it was too much contact, too violent. Not violent, but they didn't want us getting hurt.
Okay. All right. Interesting how it ended up. Go ahead.
So 97, jiu-jitsu is not a popular thing at the time. The UFC was only a couple of years old. They only had a couple events by then, and they were barbaric, So he went, the instructor at the karate school had been going, we were in South Jersey. He had been going into Philadelphia to one of the only jiu-jitsu schools, on the East Coast at that point. He got his blue belt, which now would be entry level, but back then was, qualified to almost teach. So By the time I started 2 years later, he had converted the whole school to a jiu-jitsu curriculum. So almost by a weird thing, like my parents didn't go seeking Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They didn't want us strangling kids and, trying to break people's limbs. They wanted us doing, katas and forms and breaking boards and learning discipline. And as it was, by the time I started kindergarten and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu the same week. So it was kind of just a weird thing that way. And, it wasn't very good. I didn't really see a competitive avenue. But around the same time, I also started watching Rocky. And that was something that being from that area, that's big for all of us. And, I always joke that I'm just kind of a grown man that saw a movie and couldn't let it go. So between those two things, that's where the obsession started.
Now, so in high school, did you continue on with training and go for your belts, or were you wrestling? Did you get into wrestling at that time in high school?
No. So I actually, I went to a Catholic school, private school in New Jersey, which is a great wrestling state, but we had a terrible team. Okay. And I was so focused on jiu-jitsu at the time, I never really went out for it. And then when I started getting older and started being like, hey, I'd like to compete. Also, I may want to fight MMA one day. I should probably wrestle.
Okay.
I went to like 1 or 2 practices and in the summer with the intention of signing up. And, the team, I was training with adults at that point in time in jiu-jitsu class, and in martial arts, it was different because all the adults that were going are paying to go to class. So they're taking it very serious. Going from that atmosphere to a bunch of kids who really didn't care, it really didn't seem like I was going to learn or get better. The second part to that was the coach or the assistant coach that was running it was like kind of this older guy at the time, real old school, and he hated jiu-jitsu. So he's giving me a hard time, even though I beat his entire team. So it was just one of those things where I was like, I don't think this is going to be conducive to me learning. So I really never, worked on wrestling until I got into MMA. And even then, I was fighting a couple years before I moved to a different gym and camp and met my longtime, coach that I now don't live there anymore. We're still friends, John Salter, and he was a national champion wrestler. So really, I was a couple years into MMA before I even had like formal coaching in wrestling. So it's a miracle I could take guys down in fights. But so it was always jiu-jitsu. It was always competing in jiu-jitsu, and that was the main thing until 2015.
So what got you? So I know obviously a Northeast guy like myself from Boston, and Benny, who you'll meet later, from New York. But what got you down from New Jersey? Evidently, you were into the MMA world. What got you into the Wilmington, North Carolina area, which I guess is where you really, really got serious about this and became a profession for you? Did you know back then, before you came down, that this is what I wanted to do? I wanted to fight for a living.
It was never. It was a dream, and until I was not very good at jiu-jitsu competitively. Around 16, I started to hit a little bit of a stride. I started competing in adult divisions and having some success, but still at the the intermediate level. I wasn't. I was never a phenom. You would never call me like a freak talent, or I was never really on anybody's radar. But I loved it. So it was a dream. I wouldn't say it was a goal. And I was trying to do the right thing. My parents moved to South Carolina. When I finished high school, they let me stay up there because I had, some friends, and, I loved jiu-jitsu up there and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They moved after, when it was time for me to go to college. And the easiest thing was to chase in-state tuition and follow them. And so I came down with the intention of still trying to, pursue competing jiu-jitsu at a high level and trying to win a world championship in that. And when I got to Myrtle Beach, because they moved outside Myrtle Beach, there was not a very good Brazilian jiu-jitsu scene. They were very far behind. It just hadn't evolved down here yet. Because it seems like, in a lot of ways, unless you're in big areas, like Wilmington or Charlotte, some of the smaller towns in the South are a little behind in that department. And but there was MMA. So I was training mixed martial arts. I was doing the practices with those guys just to stay in shape and work on my jiu-jitsu. And then through time, I was like, okay, I'm going to finish college. And then, when I get on my own and, I can support myself, then maybe I'll take an amateur fight and see where it goes. Well, some things happened, and by the time my senior year rolled around, I kind of got dumped on my head a little bit, and I started dating my my now wife, and it was kind of just us, and we were both flat broke, and they were having fights in town, and that was kind of the perfect time to do it. So I ended up, trying to stay in school, trying to work, and trying to fight, and something had to give. So I ended up, dropping out of school after 3 years, and taking my first amateur fight. I made a little bit of money. There's not any money in amateur fighting, but you can sell tickets. You can try to get sponsors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of it. Started pursuing it and was like, with the intention day one of, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, try to go to the UFC and make a living at this. And the second that doesn't seem feasible, yeah, I'll still train, but this is not going to be my path anymore. So it's been a full steam ahead since 2015. That was October 2015.
Yeah. So my question, so you're 30, which is, I think, relatively young in the MMA world. You have fighters fighting, into their late 30s, early 40s successfully. So to your point, how does this thing evolve? So you're obviously doing some kind of promotion that's not UFC. And how in the world do you make that jump? I mean, because the UFC is like, it's the biggest promotion in MMA now, Bellator and some other ones. But let's face it, it's Dana White, the UFC, which is now TKO, which the merger with WWE. It's huge. It's just massive. How does that even come about? I mean, you're not on their radar? How do you even get approached for the I know we'll probably have questions on this, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but how do you even get into the Contender Series? How does that work? Do you see something and you sign up for it? Do they come to you? How does that work?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because it's such a weird thing, this, this field that we're in, because with the other sports, and the more, I used to love the 4 major sports or 5 major sports,
Mhm.
whatever it was, especially growing up outside Philadelphia. And then I got to high school, and I said I kind of stuck with jiu-jitsu. I stopped following, and I've been following a lot again, watching, a lot of football and stuff. And it's so funny is in those sports, you're on a trajectory from a young age. By the time you're, second, third year in college, if you're on a path that can make it to the NFL. Fighting is so different because it's like athletics. You have to pursue it, like a professional athlete from a young age, but it's like entertainment or acting in the sense of not only do you have to be good, but you also have to kind of get a big break or get discovered or have an agent that can get you in. So it is really a weird thing where I've known guys that are, world beaters in the gym and even have good records, but were mismanaged. And I know guys that probably didn't deserve to be there that had, were at the right place at the right time and they got on the radar. So early on, in the old days, Dana White and his matchmakers would travel around and search for guys.
Mhm.
But as time went on, the sport got more popular. They didn't need to do that. So then they came up with kind of a nice filtration little farm system. So we have the regional scene. You have amateur fighting, which is for no money, and it doesn't count toward your professional record. You can make some ticket sales. You can get some local sponsors, but it's a hustle. It's a joke because we all have the same path. You're selling T-shirts with your sponsor logos and tickets to the fight out of the back of your car between training sessions.
That's
it's
pretty
a grind.
difficult. That's going to be hard. That's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then you get to regional fighting, and you go, okay, well, it's professional now. It's your starting pay. My first paycheck for my first pro fight was $500 to show, and $500 if I won. So if I won, I would win $1,000.
That's a tough way to make $1,000, Joe.
But I had, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's tough. But I also probably had $400 to $500 in medicals. I had to travel to the fight, and I had $150 in licenses for me and my corner. So
see, basically,
you're not looking at a great paycheck.
Yeah,
exactly. You're breaking even.
Wow.
So it's all an investment, for the future. So, the most money I ever made on the regional scene was, I think $2,000, and that's not even profit.
Wow.
My second to last pro fight before going on the Contender Series, I made it home with $200, and I fought for ticket sales only.
So how does this go from $200 and just, hustling and trying to get fights and trying to make as much as you can to getting into the Contender Series? How does that happen?
So the thing that as you start progressing, you start to realize the trajectory you're on. And, for me, my thing was if I lost 2 in a row, I was probably going to call it. If I ever got close to 500, like 3-3 or 2-2, whatever, I was probably going to call it. So at the time, I think I was 4-1, and that's when I kind of signed with my first management company. So now you start to go, okay, I'm 1 or 2 wins away from, 6-1 is a pretty good record in our sport. It's not like boxing. Right. You don't have to be undefeated. But a couple losses, at my weight class, there's a lot of undefeated guys. So right. I signed with a management company, and they start getting your fights. And, what these people do for you, depending on the level that you're at, is they just act as a middleman. They have the phone numbers that you need, the contacts that you need to the UFC, to the Bellators, the PFLs of the world. Mm-hmm. And they have some stock where, when they have an opening, they will come to that manager and say, who do you have? And so for me, I was 7-2 at the time. And my manager at the time, who's no longer my manager, just got an email from the Sean Shelby that matchmakes for the UFC. And another season of the Contender Series was coming up. And he asked, who do you have that fits these qualifications? And that was it. He sent his list in. I guess I best fit them. And he responded, and it was, okay, can I have more footage of that Joe Solecki guy? We sent it over, and then they selected me. So it really is. It takes a couple of breaks in your direction and winning and being ready all the time to get something like that to come up. The other way is short notice fights. Say I have a fight this weekend in the UFC, and I break my hand in training on Friday, my last sparring session, and they go, okay, we don't want to cancel the fight. They may hit up a manager that they respect and they usually go to and say, who do you have that can make the weight on a week's notice? And that's also how you can get it. So
the last
those are the 2 ways that are most common.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're never really getting a fair shake at it unless you're on the Contender Series.
So, okay, so you get on the Contender Series. Now, I'm not familiar with it, I'll be honest with you. I mean, since we knew we were going to have you on, I kind of did a little research on it. But so how long does the Contender Series run? Is it a month-long thing? Is it weeks long? Who trains you? Does the trainer train all the fighters the same? Do you each have your individual trainers? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. So they have the original TV show was The Ultimate Fighter, right? And they kind of mixed reality TV with mixed martial arts. So they still fought every episode, and there was one winner at the end of the season. But they went and lived in a house. You know, they throw alcohol in the mix. It becomes
It was pumping up the personalities of what they wanted to do, right, Joe? They really wanted to pump the personality out.
Yes, and I know a lot of guys that make it through, you know, the tryout portion to the producer meeting, and they don't make it because they're not entertaining enough. So I probably never would have made it unless they wanted a guy.
Come on, you could have made it.
Yeah, I'm very glad that wasn't my path. The other path is Contender Series, and that is kind of like how ESPN used to have like Friday night fights or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different miniature fight card every week for like 12 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever the season is. So all it is 5 fights on Tuesday night. Dana White comes with his 2 matchmakers. They sit there. Each fighter gets to bring 4 people, and it's in the UFC Apex Center, their little training center.
Yep.
It's kind of like a production studio. So it's very intimate. It's very intense. There's no walkout songs. The crowd, you can hear a pin drop. You can hear his coaches, your coaches. It is really a very trippy experience. It's very strange. And, you know, some guys go in at 10-0, so you go, okay, I lose, I'll come back. For me, I already kind of used up my losses on the regional scene. So this was kind of for me, it was one of those, I don't even know if I should be getting this call at 7-2, let alone am I getting back, you know, at 7-3 if I lose. So for me, it was a lot of pressure. I got the call. We had like 14 weeks notice. I've never been, you know, anywhere to fight besides the East Coast. I fought all my fights in Atlantic City and Philadelphia and 2 in South Carolina. That was it. So within 3 days of getting the call that I'm going to be on the show, you know, this was May. I was going to be on in July. I'm in Vegas for pre-production meeting with the producers. We're filming all the stuff that they're going to show on Fight Night, you know, talking about how, you know, this is the biggest night of your life and what do you think is going to happen tonight, all that stuff. So all that stuff we see was filmed months prior. Really cool experience, but the whole time I'm going, I just hope I get to come back here. You know, I hope this isn't my only trip to the show. I hope I get to come back and be part of the UFC and see all this stuff. So
if you lost, let me just,
it was the craziest 14.
If you had lost, Joe, is it over? Like it's one and done? How is that the way it is?
For that point in time, yes. Now, you know, maybe you have a great showing and they call you back if somebody falls out of a fight or they bring you back the next season. But you're not guaranteed a contract if you win.
Okay.
It has to be entertaining. So what it's become now, so many seasons in, is like if you don't finish your opponent, you're done. But they've had guys that put world-class performances on, but, you know, maybe one guy shot a takedown in the last 10 seconds of the fight after putting on a clinic. And Dana White was like, I don't want somebody that's going to fight conservatively. You're not in the UFC. So, like, it is really up to their discretion. So it's a very intense, I call it a pressure cooker of a job interview. You know, you have to, it's really hard to block that out. For me, the pay was really good compared to everything I was making. So it's $5,000 to show, $5,000 to win. So in my mind, I wasn't fighting for a contract. I am fighting for $10,000 and to put food on the table and to get a win on a big platform, you know, because you really can't control their opinion. That's what I told myself. So yes, you're fighting for a chance to impress the powers that be in this sport and the 3 most powerful matchmakers and, you know, brass in the sport. And that's what it was. They bring you out, you have 2 corners, no walkout song. You don't even get to fight in UFC stuff because you're not a UFC fighter. It's plain gloves. It's a really interesting experience. And, you know, for me, I walked out. I have my wife and 3 other people there because you get 4 tickets. And, you know, without the crowd and everything, you're staring at them like, oh, my gosh, this is quite a bit. I better put on because this is the only shot I got. So it was a heck of a lead up. Those 14 weeks were unlike any other fight I've ever had. The stress was, you know, really, really crazy.
So not only do you have to win, but you got to win impressively. It's got to be entertaining. So that puts even more pressure on you, right? So it's not just winning. You've got to look really good doing it.
Yes. And what's funny is, you know, obviously a finish, a knockout or a submission is what they're going for, or a crazy one-sided decision. Maybe you can't finish the guy. He's really tough. On my night, I was the last fight of the night. I don't know that it was main event because we're all kind of on an equal playing field, but I was the last fight out of 5. 3 of the first 4 were finishes. And 1 was a back and forth, like fight of the night type fight. So at this point in time, I'm standing there watching them all because you have the TV in the back room. You're like, okay, I'm just fighting for $10,000 because there's no way I can top this. And I ended up going out and catching a submission. And then what really helped me is my opponent didn't tap and passed out, went to sleep. And that seems to add dramatic effect. I think that really is what put it over. So
Wow.
that was the first night ever they did. Now it happens pretty regularly, but that was the first time in 3 seasons at that point they had ever done 5 contracts in one night. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. And you're not in a right frame of mind. So you fight, you go back to your locker room. I was the last fight, so I had to do medicals and stuff. You see the doctor and all that. And then you're sitting on the set in these director chairs, and Dana White is on camera in the other room, and he's going down the line talking about each person sitting there. And then at the end of his little monologue says, either come back next year or, welcome to the UFC. And I was the last one. So you're not in the right frame of mind you can't be confident in this situation because too much is at stake to be like, oh, I've got this. So I'm sitting there, heart pounding, like, please say I'm in the UFC. And in hindsight, there was never a chance after my fight that I wasn't going to be. But it was really, really, most of these times, people put more stock into the experience. It's going to be life-changing. It was life-changing. It was, I'd never done anything like that. And,
You
it was
must
really
have been ecstatic. Like, you must have been like so pumped when Dana White tells you
almost,
welcome to UFC.
It's almost relieved, because it's much more the path. At least, some guys maybe not. Some guys, they wrestled in college. They're a national champion. Bo Nickel. I don't know if that's a name that rings a bell, but he was a 4-time Division I All-American and 3-time national champion. He had like 2 regional fights. He's already in the UFC. So I don't think he ever lost a night of sleep being like, am I going to put bread on the table for my family fighting or not? And if not, he can go be a Division I All-American college coach somewhere and make, $250,000 a year. My story was much more like, the movie Invincible or something where you're like, at a certain point in time on the regional scene, people start to think you're going a little nuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people start to question, like, are you delusional? Is this something and I used to work at a chiropractic clinic. So during the day, I'm around, it was a lot of old people. We were in Myrtle Beach. And man, if I tell you how many interventions I got from our patients being like, hey, are you sure this is the path you want to do? Like, you seem like a nice kid, a smart kid, like all kinds of like, and you're just like, okay, nobody can see this but me. And thank God for my wife and a couple of people, but it was a heck of a, and then, every fight, you're going further and further in this. You're getting older, and you're also in your 20s. Everybody that went to college is taking their wife on vacation or, buying their first house and all these things. And you're like, oh my gosh, like you can't help but question yourself a little bit. So the peak of it was Contender Series for me. I was like, I was a 450 credit score going into the Contender Series.
That's awesome.
I didn't know they made them that low.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
Hey,
it was.
Joe, I've been there. I've been there. Believe it or not, I've actually been there.
Forever.
Well, I want to check and see if we've got any questions from any of our viewers. Yeah, we do have some questions. So let's get Tony, our producer, and I think you guys know each other. So let's get Tony to ask a few questions from our viewers for UFC Lightweight Contender, Joe Solecki.
Sure thing, Les. So Barry Smith wants to know, Joe, after 8 years, what have you learned?
Not get hit?
It's funny because, a lot of things practically. But, I think the biggest thing is, fighting is a metaphor for life. Like, there's a reason people that don't even know the sport, if it's on, you're going to watch. You know what I mean? Like, it's fascinating because it's a metaphor for life. It's tough. You get knocked down, all these things. The biggest thing, obviously, in my life, it has strengthened my faith. Kirk Cousins, I've become a fan of him since that quarterback documentary. And he said it about football, and his dad was a pastor, and said it about his pastor. He said, I think God made him a pastor because it kept him close to him. He said, I think God made me a football player because it kept me close to God. I think God made me a fighter for that because it gives me manufactured adversity. Like, a lot of it's my own fault. I'm choosing to fight, right? But things get tough. You start to question yourself, and it is really nice because it's a process of like strengthening faith, but also self-discovery. So I feel like when you go through it's manufactured. I don't have to have a loved one be sick or, something really tragic to get to really feel manufactured adversity. So it's a self-discovery process. I feel like I know myself and can rely on, my instincts and what I'm going to do in tough times, thanks to fighting. You know what I mean? I don't know if that answers the question, but after that, everything else is very, very, nothing gets me worked up. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I feel like everything is mappable because fighting is mappable. And for me, I truly believe fighting is a metaphor for life. So aside from, sickness or, something out of the ordinary. I think everything is mappable and everything can be problem solved. And that's kind of the approach I've now, not being a crazy kid at 21 doing this anymore at 30. I feel like I'm pretty calm approaching everything in my life because everything seems very, very mappable. Everything seems like, kind of the volume's turned down after fighting, All
right. Excellent question, Barry. And I like the answers. Tony, you want to keep them rolling?
Yeah, we got quite a few.
We got quite a few, Joe. You're popular. MMA is good tonight, so let's keep them rolling.
Going with Barry again. Barry says, it's obvious that your style is not a striker, but wrestler. 66% of your wins go to distance. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers don't lie, so I think that is the case, which is funny because when I was on the regional scene, I was just finishing guys left and right, and my criticism was like, oh, how's this guy going to do in a dog fight when you got to, scratch and claw? And now in the UFC, it's been the opposite. A lot of decisions. I've had a couple where it's just becomes, a little bit of a brawl, and done pretty well. But at this point in the game, I feel like I can strike with anybody in the world. It's just a matter of what ends up happening, So I've gone into fights where the other guy's supposed to be the kickboxing specialist, and obviously I grew up grappling, and they shoot in on me because I hit them. So I haven't had that breakout performance where I get to display the kickboxing, but there's a lot of things where I've hit guys and they change their mind real quick. So we spend just as much time on every other aspect, but having grown up in grappling, definitely more of a grappler, and I think I've actually spent more time going the distance now than finishes.
Another good question by Barry. Before we go to the next question, Tony, I wanted to ask something because it was something it's been on my mind, and something that Mike Tyson said. Mike Tyson said about fighting is everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I've actually been there. I've actually put on the gloves and I've actually trained. And my sensei's yelling to me, do it, breathe. And the minute I got whacked in the head, I went all black and I went blank and I lost everything I was taught and I went after the guy and it got worse. So my question is, when you fight, you obviously see film on a fighter. You have a plan. Maybe this guy's not good on the ground. Maybe you want to take him down. Maybe you want to strike with this guy. If it's not working, you get through the first round and it's a 3-round fight or even a 5-round fight. You get through the first round. Do you go back to your corner and say, listen, this isn't working. Can we try plan B? Maybe I can break him down, some kicks to the legs. Maybe I throw more jabs and I don't go for the ground game right now. How does that work?
Absolutely. The biggest thing is fighting is crazy. And I'm not just a crazy choice to do for a living. Like, it's chaotic. We were talking about that today in the gym. I can do in boxing and, in each individual combat sport, the better guy usually wins. In mixed martial arts, the small gloves, the amount of different strikes you're allowed to throw, elbows and knees, kicks, you can block and still get clipped and still get hurt. So it's crazy. So you have to, a game plan is a very dangerous thing to stick to. You really have to, we call it a template at our gym, so we have the spots that we know, in every area where we'd like to be, but we try to focus 90% on us because I can't control what this other guy does, that's the big thing. And then the other thing I always tell my guys is above any game plan we have, I have to go out there and make my reads. You know what I mean? Like, to go back to football again, you've got to be able to call audibles. And that's where, as you progress in your career, you see that a lot. Guys if you go to a regional fight, an amateur fight, they just look like two cats. They run at each other and they just start scrapping. As you watch the guys with the better and better records getting closer to the higher level, and then in the UFC, you see them come out, touch gloves, circle, they feint. They see where that guy's at, what's his responses, and they're making reads because sometimes it can be totally different than your game plan. I've gone out there and planned to grapple guys, and they throw that first shot. And you're like, holy cow, this guy is a lot slower than I thought. I'm going to punch him. I'm going to kick him. I'm going to keep moving and stay on the feet. I've gone out in a fight and been dropped in the first 10 seconds and had to come back. So you can't plan for, any one specific thing. You just have to work on, your template of if we're here, here's the 2 or 3 things we want to do, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating because it's not all about the physical. It's about the mental too. You've got to think on your feet. You've got to pretty much adapt, like you said, to what's happening in front of you at real time. So I just wanted to check that out. Tony, I know we've got some more questions, so let's throw a few more at Joe Solecki.
Sure thing. So Tech for Fun asks, how do you recover quickly? I imagine the day after a fight can't feel so good.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny because it's not even, some fights you're definitely banged up. Like after this last one, I got slammed, my shoulder's still not right. I'm still going to, physical therapy. I'm still dry needling and got stem cells, a whole bunch. But typically after a fight, the worst part is the adrenaline, so I can fight for 2 minutes and I can fight for 3 rounds, and I'm going to probably be just as sore the next day because that adrenaline turns to lactic acid, it seems like, and then you're just, you're exhausted. Typically, I never sleep the night after a fight. Especially after a win, you're just riding on that wave. So, a couple days later, you're exhausted. But the thing is it's not even after the fight because you have some downtime after that. You can take a week, you can go light. You're not fighting for a while. It's the training. The training recovery is the tough part. After the fight, the big part is adrenaline masks so much. So, when we're sparring and training, you may feel stuff. If I hit the top of somebody's head, my hand hurts right away. In a fight, you really don't feel any of that. So you might feel it, but it doesn't hurt, right? I've kicked, going to throw a body kick and hit somebody's elbow with my shin. Oof. And felt it and been like, oh man, that's going to hurt later. But in the moment, you feel nothing. 5, 6, 7 hours after the fight, you're laying there like, oh my gosh, I can't walk. So it's that adrenaline. It's a really interesting thing where, I've been cut in a fight and you feel the fact that you're cut, but it doesn't hurt, it's really, really interesting. So after the fight, I always try to get back in the gym in some capacity Monday, just mentally, because I don't ever want to feel like this is my lifestyle. I'm a martial artist before I'm even a prize fighter. So I don't like to disappear after a fight and go away. So even this last one, I couldn't throw a punch. We were in the gym on Monday doing footwork. I have a lot of students and stuff, and I want them to make sure that they see me back, win, lose, or draw, chipping away at it, and in one piece, So, the recovery is key, especially after training. I do a lot of, do physical therapy. I do cold plunge every day, compression. So like the boots that you see, stuff like that. Pretty much doing at least 1 or 2 modalities every single day to get ready for the next day, especially now. When I was younger, nothing. I just slept. But now I've got to do a lot to come in ready to go every morning.
Ah, that's an excellent question. Tony, let's go to one more question, then maybe we'll go to commercial and bring Joe back with the book. What do you think?
Sure thing. Let me just put this up before we go to the last question of the segment. This is a very special message for you, Joe. It's from your daughter.
Uh-oh.
Oh, wow.
And she says, Daddy, I love you.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Nothing better than that, yeah. Joe. Nothing better than that.
That's the best. That is the best. Yeah. We had both kids the last fight week, and it didn't go our way, but the week was awesome. And it's funny because, you picture all these guys as like, these rough, tough, and it wasn't like that. There was probably like 6 or 7 fighters on the card, all had their little kids there, babies and stuff. And
that's cool. It's
really cool to see the paradox, right? Like 1 minute we're all running around chasing our kids, and it's just a work week, and then the next minute you're in the cage fighting.
Well, fighters are what you do, but it's not who you are. So, like
exactly.
You said, you're a man of faith. Other people could be doing other things. You could have a person doing, into different hobbies and things. So it definitely does not make you that person. It's kind of, your profession, but outside the ring, you're Joe Solecki, husband and father. So that's a big deal. Let's go to another.
Yes,
let's go
exactly
to one more question. And I'm not either. I'm not a husband. I'm not a husband. I don't have any children, but I have plenty of friends that do, so I know what it's like. But let's go to one more question, and then maybe we'll go to a break. Tone?
It's up to you.
Well, actually, what I wanted to do, I know, Joe, we've got some video clips on you, which, we really wanted to show. Tony did a great job with this. And I know one of them is, we're going to call it like the fight of your life. I think it was the fight that you really called your fight of your life. And if Tony, I know we've got a few, but if Tony has a chance, he might be able to throw that up there, and then maybe you can remark or talk about it. I don't want to put Tony, I don't want to put too much stress on Tony, but.
Let's take this question, and then we'll go.
All right, let's take a question, and then we'll go to that, and then maybe you can kind of, narrate that. So let's go to this question right now.
So Eric Mayer asks, who inspired you to get into the MMA? Another fighter? Was it Bellator or any other league of consideration before? Any other league of consideration before the big show?
That's a great question. Yeah, on both sides. Okay. You don't have a tattoo of Rocky Balboa on top of the steps on your bicep if you can't say Rocky, but he's not a real person. So
that's
the biggest thing was my lifelong jiu-jitsu coach, John Hassett. I don't know that he inspired me to be a UFC fighter, but just to be a martial artist for life. He lives a certain way where, I've known the man since I'm 6 years old now. And, sometimes you get to know somebody when you're older and you start to see things like, maybe they weren't who I thought. This guy was who he always said he was. He's a great husband, a great father, a great teacher. And it was just one of those things where I was like, I want to be like that. I want to make sure, but also awesome at jiu-jitsu and never stops learning. So that is him. And then along the way, whether it was people I watched on TV that I drew inspiration from, I actually ended up fighting one of them, Jim Miller. He's from New Jersey. Him and his brother were in the UFC, and Jim Miller has the most fights in UFC history. I ended up fighting him. But I've been watching him since I'm 13. Frankie Edgar is another UFC fighter from New Jersey.
I remember Frankie.
And what they all have in common, the ones I liked, and Weidman as well, they were very relatable, and they didn't seem larger than life, right? They were just like regular people, and that worked really hard. So I really always appreciated that. In my own, experience, kind of guys I trained alongside, after living in Myrtle Beach, I met a guy by the name of John Salter who he fought in the UFC a little bit when he was younger, and then had a really great run in Bellator and fought for the world title. And we actually moved from Myrtle Beach to Wilmington to train with him. That's how we ended up there. And that was awesome because that was the first person I spent every day with. Who was like, he was a great guy. He's a man of faith. He's now a father. He was a husband then. And they were older than us, but not a ton. So it was relatable. But him and his wife had been where me and Casey were, that struggle to get to the big show and make a living out of it. He's, very well-rounded in decision-making. He owns a jiu-jitsu school and other businesses. And it was just a really helpful friendship that we still have. I could call him up today and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's probably been there, done that, so that was huge. Being alongside him. My boxing coach in Myrtle Beach when I first moved was like something out of a movie, just willing to work with me for free. He's a 2-time leukemia survivor. He had a bone marrow transplant and wears ankle braces. So walking is miserable for him, but he can hold pads and box. It's amazing. We really had a heck of a crew who's always stuck by me. And one of my closest friends, who I also was like my only friend I met in Myrtle Beach from the jump, Ali Alreida, and we were kind of in the same boat. We had all these dreams. We loved jiu-jitsu. We loved training. He fought a little bit of MMA, kind of working a bit of a dead-end job that he hated. And then around the same time I got to the UFC, he ended up starting his own martial arts school, and they're thriving. They're up in Bay Ridge in Brooklyn. And he's another guy. Every fight you'll see him in my corner now. But same thing. All around the same time, I met all these people, and I would not be here without them. So, obviously there's some guys that fight that I take inspiration from, but then also some people that have just been there on the day in, day out on TV that are inspired. And my wife, she's the best of all because she literally kept me going because she saw it when I didn't. I started to doubt myself, and she was like, absolutely not. You're not doing that. We're already here. You got this. So, she's been the best. I
was going to say, shout out to Casey. I got a chance to speak with her a couple weeks ago, and I know she's been incredibly supportive of your career, and there's nothing like it when she's backing you. I pretty much feel like you can do everything out there. So that's outstanding. And a great question.
Yeah, Casey is better than me in every way, except maybe at martial arts. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. There's a lot of situations where I'll get credit for something, and it was Casey pushing me to do it, including keeping fighting. But stuff like, if somebody's competing or something, I'm like, oh, should I go to that and coach her? Should I do this or that? And her answer is always to do the right thing, So it's really, really cool. Like, I get a lot of credit for stuff. Oh, it was so cool that you showed up to do this or you went and did that thing that seemed like a very nice gesture. And I try to do the right thing. But a lot of people have that significant other. I see it with young guys that I train with and stuff that are like, no, you need to be here spending time with me or whatever. And that's fine too. She's always pushing me to do the right thing for, either my career or other people. And it's funny because people will ask that, like, how did you meet someone like that? And this and that, like, what did you do? I'm like, I didn't train her to be like that. She's awesome. I don't know how to tell you that. She makes me better. So shout out to her.
Well, I thank her a lot because she kind of got us together. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Casey. I know that you want to run the video, Tony, if you found it. So we're going to run the video, and I want you to kind of narrate, Joe, a little bit about what we're about to see.
We go out there and we fight.
Nice touch to the body there by Solecki.
Take his back. I look for my choke.
So
wait for the tap. And the
What's
tap
funny is they called this one. So in the little docu-series we did, that fight of my life.
First time, I find myself out of the first round.
And it's so funny because when I talk about it in the video, it says,
everything is really bright, really
I hit him, he didn't go away.
It is like the worst
I actually
experience
finished
of your
this
life.
guy in the first round
fight
with
with a
a rear
fairy tale,
naked choke.
the rest was a disaster.
The fight that I was referring to was on the regional scene. And I don't know if that footage, we don't even need to show.
Yeah, we grew up, with a very different
it was on
version
the
of faith.
regional
We're
scene,
from
my
the
first
Northeast,
loss
so
ever.
for me, I would go to
and
church.
I got
But
clobbered. I
that
won
was
the
kind of
first
where it started
round,
and stopped.
And
It
then
was
had
one of
an
those
adrenaline
things
dump.
where
We
once
talked
I
about
graduated
adrenaline
high
earlier.
school, I
And
just kind of left my faith there.
In that
I got into
situation,
martial arts
your
by
arms and legs
what I
stop
thought
working,
for a lot of my life
and you're
was
present,
accident.
but you
At like
can't do
4 years
anything.
old, I
And
saw
I
the
just
Power
got
Rangers.
destroyed.
They had little
rounds
scenes
after
where
that.
they'd be kicking the bag or
And
doing
honestly, it was
forms with each other or
the
whatever
most
it might have
going
been.
forward.
I wanted
So
to be one of them.
What's funny is it made it look like that was the fight that I lost and got beat up in, but actually that fight I won, and I choked him in the first round. But so yes, the one they were referring to was a fight on the regional scene. It was my first loss ever, and I got beat by a guy who doesn't even fight anymore. And it's so funny because at that point in time, you're questioning everything. Can I even keep going? And you fast forward a couple of years, and I don't think that guy ever made it out of the regional scene. And
you're in the UFC.
Exactly.
So it worked out great for you and not so great for him. But thanks, Tony, for running that clip. I really appreciate it. It's the first time we've kind of run anything like that. And we're just evolving, Joe. Every week we just get a little bit better and better. So we have any more questions, Tony, before we go to break? Oh, we got a lot. Joe, you're popular. You're popular. We got a lot of questions. Let's roll them.
Sure.
He wants to go home to his family. We got to tell everybody that too. But
All right. So Barry asks,
No, we're fine. This is awesome.
whenever you dominate, you look up and point to a higher power. Who instilled that in you?
good question, Barry.
The funny, obviously, we were laughing today. You can't say, because people will say to fighters, like, oh, you're a warrior. We're like, hey, we got to be careful about that. Because we were talking about like Navy SEALs and stuff today and how crazy that is and how awesome they are. But, the saying, like, there's no atheist in a foxhole. Well, we're not quite in a foxhole, but fighting can get really nerve-wracking on fight day. So I feel like I've been doing that. Even when I wasn't strong in my faith, I've been doing that. Because on competition day and grappling or fighting, like, that was always in there. But now, ever since, like, I always learn and never stay, never get too high. I always stay in the middle. And by doing that, the first thing that pops in my mind is like, thank you, God, for keeping me safe and healthy and here, I think it's what kept me from losing my cool in the last fight. It's not fun to get slammed, to lose, and have your opponent standing over you mocking you. But again, you're just like, when you feel that closeness to God, it puts it in perspective. This isn't my be-all, end-all. As much as I love it, I want to do this forever. I want to make money for my family, and I want to glorify God in the process. Sometimes it takes, losing and losing graciously and winning graciously. I try to always, check on my opponent, and it's not to put on a show. It's just because I appreciate them, and I know what this could be. I know that could have been me. If I zigged when I should have zagged, that could have been me. So it's just, pointing to, and you get the opposite on Instagram. I'll get, if I post, all glory go to God or something, people get real mad at that. And they'll be like, oh, so what happens when you get knocked out? I'm like, all glory still goes to God. I don't know what to tell you. So
Be
it's
true
one of
to
those things
convictions,
where
Joe,
you just
right?
know how, exactly. You know how crazy this sport can be. And I'm just thankful to see another day.
So let me ask you a question. Do you have a rematch clause with this fighter that you had just fought? And I know you're rehabbing and things like that. Is there a rehab? Is there a rematch clause in there with the UFC, or do they just pair you up the next time you're healthy and ready to fight with someone else? Or do you want to fight this guy again?
I would love to, but the latter is the truth. They're just going to match you with somebody else.
Okay.
The thing in this sport is, I'm not, especially me, I'm not on that level to negotiate terms, have a rematch clause or anything. So I don't think he really loved the idea of that fight to begin with, because I'm ranked behind him. So for him, he's already matched up, I believe, and he's trying to climb the rankings. We're all chasing the same thing, the top 15. So you typically always want to fight up. So especially for him, he did a great job on that night. I think he was in some trouble. I think that's why he celebrated so hard. I think you kind of go, okay, I got away with one. I don't think he would want to run that back. You know what I mean? I kind of felt like I was a lot better than him.
Was it more of a mistake? And I saw the fight a little bit, and I know you had him. You had him. He had you on your back, and then he lifted you and did whatever he did there. But was that more of, you think, a tactical on your part? Do you look at it? I kind of more lost that fight than he won that fight. How did you look at it that?
Yeah, yes, I do think that. But he won. So that's all that matters,
The end result.
I would never want to take that away from him because here's the thing. I can't pick anybody up in an armbar with one arm, I don't think, and slam them. So he did something to put me out. Do I think I'm the better fighter? Yes, but it's also my job to think that, right? I shouldn't be looking at anybody in this sport while I'm still fighting and say that guy can beat me 9 times out of 10. I should be looking at everybody and saying, aside from something crazy, I beat them 9 times out of 10. I have to have that mentality. So I don't want to discredit him. He did a great job. But I was shocked how easily I could take him down. I was shocked how easily I control him. And I definitely got a little overzealous trying to take the back, and I ended up on my back. And it's funny because I don't like attacking limbs, especially in mixed martial arts. Guys are too strong with adrenaline. They don't tap. They're too, in jiu-jitsu tournament, you have less adrenaline. You submit guys a lot easier. I like chokes because if they don't tap, I can put them out. Or punches, So it's so out of character for me to do that. And, the nice part is I always joke my students, I fell on that sword, so they can learn from me. So, yeah, I would love it back, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. So on to the next.
Well, let's go to one more question, and then I want to go to a break, bring you back, bring the book in, because, the book's our resident wager man. He doesn't do much on MMA, but I know he has a couple questions for you. So let's get one more question in, then go to a break.
Okay, so Tech for Fun asks, does your training allow you to eat at Kilwin's Ice Cream in Wilmington?
Yeah, man.
It does mine.
So the nice part, yeah. So we live outside of Charlotte now in Gastonia. But when we were in Wilmington, yes, it did. Because I train all year long. Some guys take a lot of time off. Some guys get really heavy between training camps. They don't like to be disciplined. I follow like 90-10. So like, even though I don't have a fight coming up, I'm eating healthy every day of the week except Saturday. So I get to keep that because my weight's always pretty good, even in camp 3 weeks out. So typically our Saturday looks like pizza and ice cream or burgers and ice cream. So yes, it does. And absolutely, if I'm in Wilmington, I'm going to Kilwin's 100%. Up here, we have Culver's. They have custard. It's really good. Not quite Kilwin's, but it'll do.
I have to ask, he's got a 6-pack, Tony. I've got a 0-pack, and we have the same diet. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is. But, well, listen, Joe, we're going to come back after this commercial break. We're going to bring Benny in. We're going to answer a few more questions from our viewers. And there's a couple other things I want to talk to you about. Your gym that you're affiliated with right now that you're doing some training. We want to promote that as well. And we want to talk about what's the future for Joe Solecki in the UFC. So we'll do all that, bring back Benny the book after this.
Jim's Pawn and Gun Shop, located at 4212 Oleander Drive, Wilmington's #1 firearms dealer. Sporting a large inventory, including all brands of handguns and long guns, a full stock of accessories, and all types of ammunition. Jim's Pawn and Gun Shop has it all, including the best customer service in the area.
Before the lights go out, call Wilmington Generators. We offer the lowest price and a 10-year warranty for all Briggs & Stratton installations. A Briggs & Stratton powers more of your home for less money. Call for a free quote. Wilmington Generators. We play with power.
Welcome back to Swartz Talkin Sports. I'm Les Swartz. We have special guest Joe Solecki, UFC Lightweight Contender. And look who just popped into the screen. We have none of this, Benny the Book, the King of Carolina.
How's everything going, Joe?
Hey, what's
How's
up,
everything
man?
going? I got a few questions for you.
A hard day.
Good.
All right.
I got a few questions for you there. Question, obviously you have students and you train, but how long does it take for you to train once you get a fight? Like, I'm sure you work out like daily, but when they call you and say, okay, March 30th, you have a fight, do you have like a routine, like a 6-week training program, or?
Yeah. So typically my preference would be to know, I'd like to know even further out. I'd like to know 12 weeks because then you kind of do a pre-camp, but the sweet spot is about 8 weeks. But I think because we train all year, realistically, I could fight in 3 weeks. I'd rather not, please don't tell the matchmakers that. But a typical camp would be 8 weeks, so 7 of training. And then that's when you start to up the intensity. And, before, as a younger man, I would train like a madman all year long. Now, and we would come up here and train in Charlotte 2 days a week. So, from Wilmington, 4-hour drive, stay over. Now I get to train my head coach all year long, and he's really good about periodizing and pulling us back or pushing us forward however we need. And that's the best thing for me, because some guys undertrain. I am a chronic overtrainer. And as I go into my 30s, I have to be smarter. So
right, yeah.
When we get in camp, it really starts to, that's when we got to save our body for. So the big differences are that by then, I'm training every day, at least twice a day. Typically, it's 2 skill sessions and then either a weightlifting session or a conditioning session every day. Some days are just 2, and then some days, he'll pull us off if we have a hard day the next day. Twice a week, we're sparring hard. So, out of camp, we'll do a lot of lighter sparring, playing with new techniques and stuff. In camp, it's, in the cage with our gear. We have shin guards and bubble gloves, and I'll either grease my face or wear a headgear. But in camp, it's a lot of 3 fresh opponents, and I'm staying in for 3 straight rounds, so 3 5-minute rounds, like fight. Yeah. On Tuesdays and Friday or Saturday. So twice a week, I'm getting in a fight. And then we also really up the conditioning. So out of camp, I'll do a lot of long distance running or, biking and stuff like that. In camp, it's a lot of short intervals. And then by the last 3 weeks is when I call it Uncle Jeff's Madness, and my coach is Jeff Jimmo. And he gets just to have the reins. He's got 10 stations, and he's telling me when to switch, and I'm pushing a sled, I'm riding the airline as hard as I can, I'm hitting pads, whatever it might be. So typically we're around 12 to 15 sessions a week.
Benny, you think we could handle that kind of training?
Oh, yeah. I used to do that all the time. I can handle the kill ones. You know that.
I know you can handle the kill ones. I know. You might be able to take Joe down with the kill ones. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I've got a question, Joe, for you. And I've always wondered about this. Is it relates MMA to boxing, which I'm obviously more familiar with. Now, boxing, they usually have a weigh-in a day or 2 days before the fight. They weigh in at a weight, say the welterweight's 147. Then in 2 days, he literally eats himself to 158 pounds or 160 pounds. The weight for a lightweight in MMA is what, 150?
155.
155. So what is your natural walking around weight during this, when you're fighting? What's your natural weight?
Yeah, so right about now, I'm probably about 177, 178.
Whoa, okay.
I'm in shape. I'm training hard. My cardio is good. I train all year long. I'm not, restricting. And then when I get into training camp with the intensity that ups, I'll usually shed, 5 pounds right out of the gate. I'm probably 173, 172 for most of the camp. And, then the last 3 weeks is when I have to tighten up the diet a little bit. So then I will try to go into fight week just below 170. If I can be 169 on that Sunday, we usually leave Tuesday for a Saturday fight. Then I know I'm pretty much good to go. Thursday is when I'll cut the weight. I'll cut the weight Thursday night for a Friday morning.
Okay, how do you cut weight? Benny and I want to know this. How do you cut weight?
Yeah, it really is a really interesting process, especially now. Back in the day, that's the thing is, we're still not far removed from like our leather helmet days, in MMA. So people think of it as like running around in trash bags and stuff. Now the science and the recovery is so good.
Okay,
it really is. I call it a temporary displacement. So. I will diet down just a couple pounds to about, what I usually cut water weight from is about 165 on Thursday. Weigh-ins are Friday morning. Some guys cut early Friday morning, like 5 a.m., because we have to weigh in by 9 to 11 o'clock is our window. I've started doing it the night before because you're not going to sleep good either way, dehydrated or stressing about having to make weight the next day and race the clock. So a lot of guys cut Thursday night, but all it is going to be a sodium manipulation. So throughout the week on Monday, I'll start drinking water loading. So I'll drink 2 gallons Monday, 2.5 on Tuesday, 2.5 to 3 on Wednesday, and then deplete the sodium on. So no sodium. You'll load sodium throughout the week, cut fiber and sodium on Wednesday, and then your body starts to shed what it doesn't need anymore. It's really interesting. And then come Thursday, you're just back to sipping throughout the day. And maybe I'll eat lunch. I'll stop eating around 4 o'clock, and I'll start my cut around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And then from there, it's just a water cut. So some guys prefer a sauna. Some guys prefer a hot tub or a hot bath. The bath, I think, is the worst because it gets hotter than a hot tub. And now during the COVID era, we didn't have to go to the public sauna anymore. So they didn't want us, intermingling with the fighters. We were being tested so much. They provided the little personal saunas that are, the head is sticking out. And that is the best, because now I can breathe room temperature air, but still sweat from below, below the neckline, which is really cool. Because the worst part about a sauna when you're cutting weight is, you're breathing hot air and your heart rate starts going and you're miserable, So I prefer that and the hot tub mixed. And, typically it'll take 2 to 3 hours, with some rest in between. And I'll wring out about 9 pounds, 10 pounds. And it's for a very short time. The next morning we're up, I step on the scale. And now with the way, the science and supplementation is, they have an amazing recipe of electrolytes ready to go. So the UFC provides it, or you could hire your own nutritionist, but the UFC's is really good. The second my butt hits the chair after weigh-ins, they come up with 4 drinks. They tell you, drink this first one within 15 minutes, sip this next one over 15 minutes, the next 2 over the next 2 hours. And then they'll give me a sheet of the macronutrients that I should eat to get back to full speed. And it'll be like 965 carbohydrates, grams of carbohydrates, X amount of protein. And, if you follow it, you're going to find yourself back to, anywhere from, if I'm 155, I've been as heavy as 173. And I've been as light as like 168, 167, but still a significant gain. You don't feel depleted, and you can perform pretty good the next day.
That's incredible.
I still think the sport.
So you gain that weight back, after the cut process. And normally from the weigh-in to the actual fight, is it normally 2 days in the UFC?
No, so I've had them, it really depends on the time that the TV event is going to be. So during the COVID era, I fought on an ABC card. So we were going to be on like, mainstream TV, not ESPN, not the app. And that was super early. Our call time in Vegas was, I think I left at 7:30 a.m. I fought by 9:30 in the morning. So for that one, it was just under 24 hours. If you're fighting on the East Coast, or like I fought at night when I fought in Texas the last time, we got about 32 to 34 hours. That's pretty nice. But it's never really, it's always a day. We weigh in Friday morning, we fight Saturday afternoon or evening. So if we can hit 36 hours, that's ideal. But it's really, really interesting. It's a fun it's not a fun process. It's fun to always try to figure out. I do think the sport would be better without it, but how do you do that? How do you get guys to stop cutting weight? And, you make a gentleman's agreement, you have a 30-day weigh-in, it's really tough. Hydration testing, you can beat those still. So it's a really interesting process.
Well, I know that, do we have any more questions, Tone? Yeah, we do. He's shaking his head. We're 60 minutes in. This is going by pretty quick, and I know you've got to get home and things like that. So we're just
I'm enjoying it. If you want me, I'll stay. If you want me going, I'll go.
No. If we can keep you for a little bit longer, let's throw a few more questions out there.
Sure. So Eric Mayer says, I've seen you fight many times and you can throw down, but most of your wins are by submission. Don't your opponents see that coming?
Oh.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, but I think the style of grappling that I've adopted is, it's not going for submissions. I call it corralling my opponent. So I try to teach the same way. I try to have 2 to 3 answers for every possible scenario we can end up in on the ground. So the way I try to do it is, I tell my students, is kind of, you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. So if you don't show me your back and I take your back standing, then I'm going to be on top of you and able to throw a strike. Obviously it doesn't always go that way. For example, see my last fight, but for the most part, there's a system. So it really isn't, oh, he's hunting for the rear naked choke. It's going, okay, checkmate. I have nowhere to go. I can turn back in and get hit with elbows and punches, or I can give up my neck, without sounding arrogant. That's the goal. Obviously some guys succeed. I've had, decision fights, I've had losses, but that's the style of grappling I like. And when you have striking mixed in, it creates such an urgency on the defensive side of things that it's really hard to think rationally, because all it takes is, a couple of those, if they're thrown correctly. Some are peppering shots, they're not hard, but you hit somebody good and, decision making starts to get a little cloudy.
That's a great question, Eric. And Eric is one of our viewers and our subscribers, and he loves MMA. So he said he actually wanted to get into it years and years ago, and but thankfully for my company and me, he works for us. So thanks for the questions, Eric. Any more out there?
Quite a few.
Let's get, and Casey, by the way, flashed up. It's okay. Keep them. I'm cleaning. So that's what Casey said. So,
Yeah.
Joe, she doesn't want you in the house right now. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm surprised she's not. She likes to listen to me. She has to listen to me all day talk about this stuff. So,
So Barry asks, in 2020, you were replaced at the last minute with Max Roscoff, a new guy. Was it politics?
Ooh.
Kind of. I tested positive for COVID.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, honestly, it was weird because that was June 2020. And, COVID had only been around a little bit. So they had started testing before we go out there. I didn't even get I don't even think the UFC was sending the tests because after a while, they were sending them before we even got on the plane. I started feeling like I was the worst fighter in the world. I felt cloudy in one of my sparring sessions. I was exhausted. I'm like, this was not right, man. And I went and got tested, and I popped for COVID. But I don't think anybody had at that point. After a while, it became every week they were replacing. You had a lot of regional fighters either moving to Vegas or going to stay with their manager in Vegas because it was a regular thing for 2 or 3 guys to pop on a card. None had popped back then. They were only back for a month. Sports were shut down. So I text my manager. I'm like, hey, man, I just tested positive for COVID. How does this work? He was like, I don't know. No one's done it. So he said, but the one thing they did tell me was don't say anything. Just say you're out of the fight. The bad part about that was my wife was pregnant with our daughter at the time. So I have to post and be like, for unforeseen circumstances, I'm out of the fight. I'm getting messages like, is everything okay with Casey? I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm just sick, and
Gotcha.
but yeah, what's crazy is, if I'm Max Roscoff, I would hate me because he replaced me. He quit on the stool in that fight, which, in boxing, that's kind of an accepted thing. In MMA, that's a no-no. Like, you can't do that. So that really kind of ruined his career.
Wow.
And then I ended up coming back and fighting that same guy that he fought a couple months later, 2 months later. And that made my life a lot tougher, selfishly, because I just watched him make a guy quit. I'm like, what does this guy do that is so crazy? Like, is he going to break me? Like, I've never broken. It made that fight a little stressful because I'm like, okay, I thought he was a regular opponent. He's making somebody do something that never happens in our sport. What the heck how hard does this guy hit that this guy wanted out in a fight that was 1-1? So, yeah, crazy situation and crazy times. Fighting during the COVID era was wild. It was crazy.
Well, anything during the COVID era was crazy. Let me just tell you, Benny.
Joe,
Benny, next time, Benny, we have to do like a wager next time Joe's fighting, right? We've got to put some.
I'm gonna start watching. Yeah, I was checking out the lines before when you asked me to check. I told you they have a lot of February 3rd. They have a lot of fights. And Joe, how many fights do you typically have a year, or is it just random when they call you fight, or you know that you're gonna fight at least 2 times or 3 times a year?
So our contracts guarantee us a certain amount. I think mine was like 4 and 20 months. But if they call and I'm injured, they'll just extend the contract, stuff like that. So the sweet spot is 3, I think.
Yeah.
I haven't had that in a while. Some have been, injured at the time. The last time around, I fought in February and then didn't fight till December. We kind of knew we were moving to Charlotte to pick up and come here and coach and be at camp full time, because for the camp before this, my fight last February, I was doing the entire week here, and then I would go home on weekends, drive back up. I was living with my coach, and that wasn't really something we wanted to do long term. Right. In case he was pregnant again with our son, so it was one of those things where I fought in February. My deadline to fight, because she was due in July, was June. I wasn't healthy enough to get on any cards in June, so I had to kind of wait until we got here full time and pick up again. So that was kind of my doing. There's other times where I've been shelved for, they have a lot of guys now. Post-COVID, they signed so many guys on short notice for people, getting sick like I did. Right. They give them 4-fight deals. It's not a one-off. So now they got 800 guys to get fights, and they have 40-something events a year, and you got to just wait in line.
That's a good question. Benny, look at that. You're coming up with some questions regarding MMA here. I know we've got a few more out there from our viewers.
Yes, sir. So Barry asks, when there's a split decision by the judges, does it make you want to work harder the next one?
In hindsight, yes. You'll kick yourself. I lost the split decision to Jared Gordon, and for the next 3 months, I especially looking over at the family, you're like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't have gotten one more takedown. And because, we're still in a show win situation. So, if your pay is X, you get X amount to show up. I get double that if I win. And it's not 500 and 500 anymore. It's a significant amount of money. it's obviously a very different situation. I always tell guys that when they lose in the regional scene, I'm like, 500 and 500. Yeah, there's a difference between $500 and $1,000. But there's some guys that make 100 and 100. There's a big difference between $100,000 and $200,000.
Okay.
So that's frustrating. But you're trying as hard as you can. It's one of those things where even in the boring fights, you watch guys on the fence and somebody's like, "Come on, do something." It is exhausting. You're dumping the tank. No one's ever fought lazily in a fight, I don't think. Some guys could push forward a little more, but it's tough. Everybody's the best in the world in this league, and it's really, really tough to get an inch on some of these guys.
Joe, I have a question for you. So when you win the lightweight title, see, not if, but when you win the lightweight title, what are those fights worth? I know in boxing, obviously, there's different promoters. When Benny and I grew up, there was Don King and Bob Arum, and they really promoted the fight, and they're the ones who really got the money for the fighters. UFC must control all of this, but to be a headliner in a championship fight, is it worth $75,000, $100,000? And subsequently, if you defend that title multiple times, do you get more and more money? I know everyone's familiar with Conor McGregor, right? He's a big star now. He's doing movies. He talks a lot of trash. I would have loved to see you take that guy out. But I mean, just what's the uptake? Like, if you continue your career and you get some really big wins in some really big fights, financially, what's the reward there from the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the point where you're fighting for a title, you're well over six figures at that point.
Okay.
If you perform well, I've heard a lot of guys come out in podcasts and stuff. Daniel Cormier was our heavyweight champion, light heavyweight champion. But when he fought and lost to John Jones, I think he was making like $300,000, and they like their guys that fight for the title, I believe, if they fight hard, to be rounded up to like $1 million. So he said that they gave him a check for like $700,000, or they gave him $1 million check or something crazy like that. The champions is a different story. So now, back in the day, it was a couple $100,000. They may make 500 flat, and then once you have it belt, now you get a pay-per-view percentage. So you get pay-per-view points. So they'll clear, $1 million in every fight at least. Your better guys that sell more, now you're talking about, a lot more money. So yeah, those fights are worth a lot. The main events, if they're not for belts or anything, like I believe you get a $25,000 or $30,000 bonus just for fighting the extra rounds.
Okay.
So you're looking at a six-figure payday for main events, and you're looking at seven figures for championship fights.
Well, before we let you go, we've got to promote a little bit about the gym that you're currently training at, and you actually train students as well. So it's in Charlotte, I know that. So why don't you talk a little bit about the gym you are at right now, who you train, some of your training partners, so people out there can maybe check that out for themselves. Tony will run something during the show on it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The gym is called Jim O, like Jim dash O, because our coach is Jeff Jimmo, Jimmo, but it's like a play on words. And we have one of the best facilities I've ever seen. We started out in a really small facility in Gastonia. Now we're in Belmont in a we have 4,000 square feet of mats alone, like a cage, a really nice kickboxing ring, fitness equipment, everything. But the coaching staff is, I think, what separates it. Jeff Jimmo, was worth picking up my life and my kids and and moving here because the thing in our sport is you meet guys that are very good at certain disciplines. You have a wrestling coach, you have a strength and conditioning coach. I've never met anybody like Jeff. He's done every single martial art to the highest level, including strength and conditioning as well, which is an aspect of the sport. He can do my weight cut. He can do, meal prep. Like, he is awesome. So moving here was the opportunity to train under him. That's why we came. But also, he provided me the opportunity to start up or head up. They've always done jiu-jitsu here, but never had a formal program. So we have a great kickboxing coach, Diego Costa. He's one of the best kickboxers I've ever seen. I'm not just saying that. It's amazing. Like, there's guys that do jiu-jitsu, and because it's kind of flowy and a grappling art, it looks beautiful. It looks pretty. He makes Muay Thai and kickboxing look beautiful and effortless. And it is not, I tell you. I do it very ugly. So he runs the kickboxing. I run the jiu-jitsu at night. And it's been awesome. We have a great student base. We have a great fight team. We have a lot of great amateurs. I can shout out the guys I train with that are great. But also, we have a much larger student base that doesn't fight, that doesn't compete like that, that just love martial arts. You know, I'd say 95% of my jiu-jitsu class are people with full-time jobs who are just looking to learn martial art, get in shape, you know, and reap the benefits of martial arts, especially jiu-jitsu. You know, you're not getting punched, you're not getting kicked, you're grappling, it's safe. At home, we have a guy at Hassett's where I trained in New Jersey who is, I think he's 76, and he trains, you know, so you can do jiu-jitsu for life to a certain degree, whether it's drilling or rolling live. So that's what I teach. I really enjoy it. You know, I've been doing this since I'm 6 years old. And that's what I love to see. I love, you know, last weekend I cornered a guy in a fight in Charlotte at an arena in the cage and the whole nine, and that was fun. The weekend before that, I had 2 students doing their first jiu-jitsu tournament in the novice or beginner division, 6 months and under. And that was a blast. It was so much fun to see them go out and, you know, try the techniques that they learned. And, you know, if it didn't go their way, you know, see their face. I'm like, oh, would you do another one? They lit up, had a blast. That's really rewarding for me. It's fun. It's fun to help them try to, you know, get better. So that's what we do. We're on social media, just Jim-Show.
Yeah, Tony's popped
me a
that up on
message.
the
I'll
screen.
direct you the right place.
Yeah, so he's going to.
Plus, we have to take a ride to Charlotte.
And we have a fight team.
Do a show on the road. Me and you. We could grapple.
Joe,
me and you.
Yeah. Well, hold on. If Benny and I, if the book and I get there with Tony doing video, you've got to teach Benny some techniques because he's going to need it on Sundays in the golf course when I mop him up in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I am in. But we have a really cool thing. We have a lot, you know, the other cool thing is we have a lot of young people that, you know, I don't know why we've generated so much college wrestling here. That the guys that wrestled in college at a high level have ended up training here. I'm very thankful they have. And these people end up, you know, competing across the world. We had people this year that competed in, you know, Serbia. They competed in Russia. They competed in Thailand. Like, it's amazing. We have a team that travels internationally. You know, amateurs. We have professionals that, you know, I'd say a large percentage have a great chance to make it to the UFC. Some of those guys. You know, we have some of my training partners are, you know, Caleb Spears was an All-American in college at wrestling and now really doing great in MMA. Mitch Dean. We have a guy, Tom Lane, who's 3-0 and is like Chris Weidman's main training partner. So there's a lot of guys, you know, who really have a shot at this, and it's really cool. But we also have a, you know, a kids team that travels internationally and competes. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening at the gym, and it's a really fun thing to be a part of.
Well, someone just said he paid to see you get me on the mat, and I would just tell you right now, I'd get on the mat with Joe. I wouldn't. I would. It would be over pretty quick, but that's okay. Well, Joe, I know we've been going on, and we've got a lot of questions, but you know, we'll have to do a Joe Solecki part 2 before you come on on your next fight. But the 2 things I wanted to ask are, first of all, I know you're rehabbing right now. When do you think you're going to be ready to fight next for the UFC?
Yeah, I was hoping they have Atlantic City on March 31st, and that was my goal. Because, you know, after every fight, they'll reach out to management or myself, you know, when do you want to go again? That's what we said. They don't have anything for that for me. So, because that's kind of a homecoming. That would have been fun. Yeah. But I also would have been pushing it because I'm training hard, but still some limitations. So I would love, you know, April or early May at the absolute latest. So, you know, that would be ideal. That's the goal. And I'll be ready either way, but I hope it doesn't go much later than that. That would be ideal for me.
Well, you have to keep us posted, Joe, because we definitely want to follow your career. We'll be talking about it. Right, Book, right. We got that.
Road trip.
The last thing I want to ask Joe before he leaves is, Joe, when you win the UFC Lightweight title, you have to come on Swartz Talkin Sports. I want to see the belt. All right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the 100%. You know why? A, this is awesome. B, this is more professional than any MMA media we have, except unless you're talking to ESPN. So 100%.
Well, thanks. Okay, so we're a little bit below ESPN. Benny, we've got to raise the bar a little bit.
I don't even get to go on ESPN. No one from ESPN wants to talk to me. But MMA media, we get the same 5 questions. That's why you're like, oh, I don't want to keep you. I'll stay as long as you want because it's fun talking about the sport. You know, it's not fun being like, you know, what does your opponent do? How are you going to beat him? How do you win? You're like, I don't know. That's why we're fighting the fight. So I love talking about the sport. I will come on anytime you guys want. This was a blast.
Well, Joe, I got to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I know you just finished training. It was crazy. Maybe next time we catch you when you're a little bit more of a downtime. I want to thank Casey. She was instrumental of getting this set up with our producer, Tony. So I need you to get home. She's probably finishing up cleaning. Go home, kiss the wife, kiss the kids.
Get the kids.
Kiss the kids. And listen, good luck in your rehab. And please keep us posted, okay?
Great talking to you, Joe. Good
Yeah, I
luck.
appreciate you guys so much. Thanks
Thanks.
for
Good
having me. This was a blast. Take
Thanks,
care, guys.
Joe.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Joe. Listen, we'll be
Take
right
care.
back with Benny the Book and yours truly. We're talking college basketball. That's right. It's the now slow walk to March Madness. We'll be there after these words.
Millie's Ice Cream Shop, a full-service store in the Waterford Shopping Plaza of Leland, offering an array of tasty treats, including both hard and soft ice cream in a variety of flavors and delectable combinations to appeal to even the discerning palate, assured to put a big smile on everyone's face. Stop by today to enjoy your satisfying experience.
Welcome back to Swartz Talkin Sports. I got a little tongue-tied at the end, Ben. I don't know. Maybe it was a long interview for us, so I think I'm
Yeah, that was that's a tough way to make a living.
I'm telling you, very impressed. I'm very impressed with Joe.
Yeah.
The whole, he's definitely a man of faith. Just speaking with his wife, I mean, she just seems like an incredible sweetheart. And we obviously wish him a very, very speedy recovery on his rehab and to get back into the octagon soon, because you and I will be watching.
Yeah, we gotta take a road trip to go see his facility where he trains, and we'll,
I think we'll have to do that, Tony.
Monday, are you going to start that weight thing for us so that we cut some weight on Monday, starting Monday?
I think I'm going to get a personalized program from Joe. We'll get that going. But, well, we got the book, and college football is done. Now it's all college basketball. NCAA men's March Madness begins March 21st. That's actually after the play-in games. That's going to be day number 1. And, Benny, what I did was last night, I know I talked to you a little bit about it. I put together, I'm not going with the top 10, what's out there right now. I'm doing the Swartz Talkin Sports Power Rankings, our top 10. So, let's look at it a little bit. Tony did an awesome job throwing up these graphics on the top 10. And I know there was a little bit of change last night. We got the teams picked yesterday, and then obviously there were a couple upsets last night. But once Tony throws those up, we're going to talk about those. So there he is. And we both agree the UConn Huskies, they got a good shot at repeating.
Mm-hmm. No, they definitely do. I really believe they're going to repeat. They're just getting better and better. They had a bunch of injuries at the beginning of the year. The center was out for like 3 or 4 weeks. They got a young freshman that looks really good, and they got a great coach. He's he's probably the most instrumental with and because they lost 3 guys to the pros last year,
They did. He reloads Benny, and I'll tell you, he's when you say he's a great coach, not just a great recruiter, but in-game coach, strategy. The guy knows how to adjust from half to half. So now Carolina, I had second. I know you might have picked them later down the line, but they were rolling, and then unfortunately get knocked off by 1 to Georgia Tech last night.
Well, last night was the first. That was the first time they were never 9-0. I don't think in the
ACC.
In the ACC. They were on a streak. They lost by a point. They're very good, very talented. Purdue has the reigning player of the year. He's
Zach
a monster.
Edey, the 7'4" monster.
He's a monster in the middle. I mean, I don't. They play in the Big Ten is way down. Usually the Big Ten has really got like 6, 7 good teams, but none of them are really that good other than Purdue. I think, the Big East, the Big 12, and the SEC. SEC has a lot of good teams.
They do.
They really do have a lot of good teams. The Big 12's got a lot of, they got about 6 or 7 teams in the top 15 or 18.
The problem is they knock each other off. But but they will be there for March Madness, and I think it hardens them, and it makes them more prepared for the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got, just in the top 10, you have 3 Big 12 teams. Iowa State, Houston, and Kansas.
And Houston's a new team in the Big 12 coming out of the AAC. This is Kelvin Sampson's first year with the Cougars, and they just had a big win at Texas the other night. I know that another loss, Tennessee, I had rated pretty high, and they've been playing great. I think they'd won 10 or 11 in a row. They just got upset at South Carolina, who's now 19-3, and they're unranked. Right. That will change come next week. But some great teams in here.
You got some big games over the weekend. You got Duke is at NC. You got the Cougars are at Kansas. You got Connecticut's at St. John's. St. John's, Pitino's got them rolling. They're pretty good. They're a pretty good team. They got a big center, Salino or Savino, whatever his name is. He's been there a few years. Got Got Tennessee's at Kentucky. Tennessee's got a good. That guy Connect, I think you say his name Connect. He was pouring them in from everywhere last night.
Well, Tennessee unfortunately lost, but you're right. I mean, they're playing really, really well. The SEC, there's teams that aren't even ranked. Ole Miss, Auburn's got a really good team.
Yeah, Ole Miss, Auburn, and Ole Miss play each other this weekend too.
Yeah, so
That's
we're going to
another big
pick.
game.
We're actually going to pick. So we're going to do this every week. We're going to do the rankings. They'll change every week to week. I'll give Tony the heads up on Tuesdays and take the top 10. But I know you've got what? How about 3 games, Benny, this week between top 25 teams, and give me what you think.
I'm gonna go with North Carolina as one pick. I don't know what the line's gonna be. They're playing Duke. Duke is ranked in the top 10, but they've skated by a lot of games. I mean,
Possible player of the year, Kyle Filipowski, playing fantastic basketball.
Yeah, but North Carolina is legitimate. Hubert Davis is doing a really good job.
Love Hubert Davis.
North Carolina, I would take.
Do you remember? Hey, hold on, real quick, Benny. Do you remember Hubert Davis's uncle? Played for UNC and had a great NBA career. Walter Davis.
Walter Davis. Oh, Walter.
It's his uncle. One of our listeners,
he was one of the best.
Walter, loved the good humor, man. So Walter, that's a shout out to you.
I'm one of the best, Walter Davis, man.
Yeah, he was tremendous. What's your second game?
You got Houston's at Kansas.
Big game.
I'm going to go with Kansas in that game.
Okay.
I like Kansas. Jayhawks at home, and a third game that I'm going to go on the road for this one. I'm going to take Tennessee to bounce back against Kentucky.
Ooh,
Kentucky's been slipping a little bit the last few games, so I'll take Tennessee for the upset at Kentucky.
So you like the Vols to pull off a little bit of an upset in the SEC this weekend. Well, we're going to check it out. What we'll do is we'll start charting our your games and the picks week to week, and we'll roll this right into March Madness because we're right in the thick of the conference races right now, and we'll talk a little bit about maybe some mid-majors next week when we come on to talk a little bit about after our Super Bowl show. By the way, we'll just tout that out a little bit. We'll tease it with little Jerome Bettis, the bus coming on Tuesday. That'll be a big show, and Brian Holloway coming on Thursday. So we're going to have 2 shows next week. We're going to call it our Super Bowl week extravaganza. I can't say that again, Benny. I only know it once. But we'll talk a little college basketball again next week with you, and then I know you head to Florida for a few days or a week, or how long are you going to be there?
About 5 days.
5 days. All right. So you're going
leaving Wednesday. I'll be home Monday night.
Are you golfing?
So, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That was a dumb question. I know. That was definitely a dumb question. But, well, we're definitely going to check back, and we're going to do some college basketball the rest of the year. But I know we've gone long tonight, so I want to get to the wrap after this. But, again, thanks for hanging out, and thanks for those couple of questions with Joe.
Joe was a great interview. He was really interesting.
Joe was awesome. So
maybe we do a show on the road. We go to his gym and go from there.
That's going to happen. Tony's giving me a thumbs up.
Tony, he could do anything. Our producer.
That's true. We're going to have to take the show on the road and doing some other things. So, but listen, Benny, you take care of yourself. We'll see you maybe tomorrow on the golf course. I don't know.
Yep. I'll be out there. I'll be looking for you out there.
All right. Well, listen, again, thanks to Joe. We're going to be right back doing the wrap after this.
High Tide Chiropractic, located in Leland, North Carolina, off Village Road. Dr. Levi Bradburn and his team specialize not only on spinal and extremities care, but also focus on sports injuries and a variety of chronic ailments. Treatment plans may include diet and lifestyle behavioral modification to achieve optimal health. Call us to schedule your free consultation, and we will design a personalized program to meet your needs. It's time to get the results you deserve.
Welcome back to Swartz Talkin Sports. I'm Les Swartz. Again, special thanks to Joe Solecki. I know he just finished training, and he really hung out with us for over an hour. So outstanding. And a special shout out to Mike out there who really got this MMA thing rolling. He kept hitting us up with MMA. And Mike, I hope everything turns out. You know what we're talking about. So thanks, Mike, for that. And Benny the Book, as always, you're a legend. You're a legend. I've created a monster. Benny the Book, the King of Carolina. A very special shout out to my Joni. She's doing better every day, every week. Everyone's asking me. So Hun, I'll see you in a little bit. And from everyone here, and a very special shout out on the Children's Miracle Network, Vince Coleman, who was our very first Major League sports guest and now a very good friend of the show's, is out in Hawaii right now with the Children's Miracle Network. He's doing a tournament out there, and he's with all these kids. We have a video we're going to show in future episodes, maybe in a couple weeks. I'll have Tony cue that up. So amazing thing. Please take a look at it. Vince is doing some amazing work with some amazing people out there. Shot me a great video today with Tim Brown and his wife, and Vince and his wife. So congratulations, Vince, on all the great work you're doing out there, and the Children's Miracle Network hospitals as well. So we'll cue that up in a few weeks. But for all of us here at the Swartz Talkin Sports team, my producer, Tony the Tiger, for Benny the Book, this is Les Swartz saying, we'll see you Tuesday with Jerome Bettis. Have a great week, everyone.